So there have been some comments made by the Hall of Fame coach, Larry Brown, the same coach that won the championship with the Pistons, that also was the main coach for Allen Iverson. And Allen Iverson always said that he loved them. He answered Steve Kerr, who recently said that the NBA is too taxing for players and called for less workload and to cut the season down to 72 games. Now, Larry Brown's short answer was, I love Steve Kerr, but I don't buy it. And I'm going to let you listen to that clip of what he said exactly in a second. But that right there was a Hall of Fame coach, Larry Brown. He's a giant of the game, drawing a line in the sand. He was responding to Steve Kerr's theory. And with those 6 words, he ignited one of the hottest debates in all sports. Has the game really gone soft? Now you got 2 most respected minds in basketball now on a collision course, representing 2 totally different eras and 2 wildly different ideas of what it takes to survive in a league. And believe it or not, the answer to who's right could change everything. So before we get into Brown's unfiltered take, again, let me remind you what Steve Kerr actually said. Now, Steve Kerr, a 9-time NBA champion as a player and coach, has been sounding the alarm. He's watching a league packed with elite athletes, getting constantly sidelined by epidemic of soft tissue injuries. Hamstring, calves, and groins are popping at a rate that has him, in his own words, very concerned. Just look at the recent injury report. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Victor Wembanyama, Anthony Davis, Ja Morant, all top-tier talents sidelined with the kind of strains and pulls that feel like they're happening every other night. Now, according to Kerr and the Warriors medical staff, this is no coincidence. It's a direct result of how the game has changed. He argues today's NBA is a completely different animal. The three-point revolution has stretched defensive to their absolute breaking point, forcing players to cover way more ground than ever before. And the data backs him up. ESPN research confirmed the league is playing at its fastest pace since 1988-89 season. Now players are running faster and further every single game. And Kerr's logic is pretty simple. More speed, more mileage, more explosive movements. It all equals more wear and tear. He said across the league, everyone understands that it's easier to score if you beat the opponent down the floor. But when everybody is doing that, the games are much higher paced. This non-stop high-speed style is made worse by grueling 82-game schedule that leaves almost zero time for recovery, let alone actual practice. Kerr even revealed his own team recently went 8 days on a road trip without a single practice. It was just game, game, game. His solution, as I mentioned before, he's been pushing to shorten the season to 72 games, arguing it will give players' bodies a fighting chance to heal and time to, practice. And there's another layer to Kerr's argument as well that starts way before the NBA. He and the other experts point a finger at the youth basketball system, and that I can partially agree with. Now, especially the year-round AAU grind where kids are playing multiple games in a single day. The theory is by the time these Venoms get to the league, their bodies are already carrying years of overuse. They're basically damaged goods, you could say, before they're old enough to legally buy a drink. Now, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has even said that the league's orthopedic experts are seeing wear and tear in young players they used to only see in veterans. And it's a system that prioritizes exposure over rest and fundamentals, creating a generation of players who are primed for injury. For Steve Kerr, it's a perfect storm: a faster game, a brutal schedule, and a generation of athletes whose bodies were already breaking down. It's a modern problem, and he thinks it needs a modern solution. Now we're going to talk about Larry Brown, and I'm going to play those Larry Brown comments, even though they're short, but I want you to listen to them.
A lot of injuries right now. Steve Kerr came out in the last 24 hours and said that the game today is harder on guys' bodies than it used to be because of the pace. You played in the ABA back in the 60s, the early 70s. You've coached basically in every generation, so you've been around the sport forever. Is today's game harder on the bodies of the players than it was, basically through the first 50, 60, 70 years of NBA history?
I love Steve Kerr, but I don't buy it. I think we don't practice. Everybody's in load management in games, load management in practice. I think if you don't practice, you're going to get hurt. That's just me.
And that brings us back to Larry Brown. When he heard Kerr's data-driven analysis, the 85-year-old coaching legend didn't just disagree, he was completely dismissive of it. As you just heard, he said, I love Steve Kerr, but I don't buy it. He also said, I think we don't practice. Everybody's load management in games and practice. I think if you don't practice, you're going to get hurt. I personally agree with that account. The heart of the old school philosophy, pure and simple. To Brown, the problem isn't that the game is too tough. It's that players aren't conditioned for it anymore. He sees a league-wide culture of coddling, where load management has just become an excuse to avoid hard work. In his world, resting healthy guys and holding light practices doesn't save their bodies. It deconditions them. It makes them fragile and ironically more likely to get exact injuries teams are trying to prevent. Now, Brown comes from an era where practice was everything. It's where you built the physical and mental calluses you needed to survive 82 games. He's been frustrated for years with modern coaching, believing there's not enough focus on actual basketball drills and teaching. His philosophy is simple and has been. Your body adapts to the stress you put on it. If you push it in practice, it'll be ready for the game. If you shield it from stress, it's going to break. And it's not just Larry Brown yelling at this. This idea is echoed by a whole chorus of legends. Miami Heat lifer Udonis Haslem recently said he gets frustrated watching games because people just don't play hard. And of course, there's Michael Jordan, the GOAT, who famously scoffed at the idea of rest, saying players are paid to play 82 games. His take was blunt. He literally said, you play basketball 2.5, 3 hours a day. That's your job. What are you doing the rest 21 hours? Brown's critique goes deeper, hitting on a feeling that players are running the teams right now. It's a frustration he's even had in the past with superstars like Allen Iverson, where he constantly pushed for more dedication. For Brown, the answer isn't a shorter season. The answer is to get back in the gym. Practice hard, build resilience, and embrace the grind. Don't run from it. The evidence? 2 eras, 2 truths. So who's right? Kerr's data or Brown's dogma? The truth is, both of their arguments are locked into the realities of their own eras. Let's start with the old school. Charles Barkley may be the loudest critic of the modern game, constant bringing up money. He sees guys making $30, $40 million a year. Now, if Dr. J, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan could play every night in crappy shoes, fly commercial, a guy making 40, 50 million a year don't need load management. He reminds us that legends played through pain while flying coach, sometimes with strangers sleeping on their shoulders for hours before having to go out and guard Akeem Olajuwon. The game itself was a different kind of brutal. The Bad Boy Pistons, the Knicks Heat rivalries, legal hand checking, it was more punishing, physically confrontational game. It was an era of iron men. John Stockton played all 82 games in the season 6 times. AC Green once played 1,192 consecutive games, a record that sounds completely unbreakable today. These guys weren't built differently. Their mindset and what the league expected of them was. Now let's look at the new school. The science does back up a lot of Steve Kerr's saying. but with a key difference. The stress on the body today isn't necessarily greater, but it's different. The old NBA was about absorbing physical contact, bruises and battles in the paint. Today's game is about managing explosive force, the constant high-speed direction changes, the drives to the rim, and the sheer amount of sprinting in a pace and space offense puts incredible strain on tendons and ligaments. That's why we're seeing a spike in the exact soft tissue injuries Kerr is worried about. It's a game of violent acceleration and deceleration, which can be way more taxing on connective tissues than the brute force style of the past. But as with muscles, if you get them used to something, they will hold on. Otherwise, you decondition them and they break. So while Larry Brown sees a change in mentality, Steve Kerr identifies a fundamental change in the physical demands of the game. One sees a lack of grit, the other sees an unsustainable workload. Now this gets us to the heart of the conflict. This isn't just about injuries, it's a philosophical battle for the soul of basketball. On one side, you have Steve Kerr, the modern realist. He looks at the data, sees his players breaking down from a style of play his own team helped invent, and concludes the system itself is the problem. Always blaming the system. He's coming from a place of protection and preservation. He thinks that to keep these world-class athletes on the court, the league has to adapt. On the other side, you have Larry Brown, the old school purist. He looks at the exact same injury report and doesn't see a broken system. He sees a broken culture. He sees a generation of players taught to value rest over resilience. And he believes the solution isn't to change the game, but to change the player's approach to it. He's coming from a place of preparation and toughness. So is the modern era soft, like Larry Brown suggests? Or is it just smarter, faster, and more athletic than ever, as Steve Kerr's analysis shows? Do you toughen up the players or do you lighten the load? The clash between Larry Brown and Steve Kerr is bigger than just a headline. It's a snapshot of a league at a crossroads, torn between the blue-collar ethos of its past and the data-driven, delicate ballerina reality of its future. Brown represents the soul of the game, the belief in hard work, practice, and old-fashioned toughness. Kerr represents the mind of the game and evolving understanding of biomechanics, player health, and long-term careers. I personally agree with Larry Brown, and I don't even have to think about it. The NBA had a higher pace before, and it didn't have all these injuries, but players practiced hard every single day and had their bodies prepared for the grind of the NBA and the length of the season. There wasn't this many injuries. Everyone sees this different though, and both men are champions, so it's hard to argue. Both have forgotten more about basketball than most of us will ever know about basketball. And both are making valid points from their corner of basketball universe. But now the question is to you guys. Who are you rolling with? Larry Brown's old school grit or Steve Kerr's modern science? Is the problem with the game or the players playing it? Now let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear from you and where you stand on this. And don't forget to subscribe for more breakdown of the biggest debates in the NBA. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.